Hello. Does healing make us need people less or love them better? A few days ago, I lost 2 friendships and a community of women during one of the hardest seasons of my life. At first, my mind wanted answers. What's going on in their inner world? Why aren't they acknowledging my pain the way I would like them to acknowledge it? What should I have done differently? But as my nervous system settled and the protective parts and wounded parts inside me softened, I realized I wasn't asking those questions anymore. Instead, I found myself wrestling with a completely different question. Does healing actually help us need people less, or does it help us love each other better? And I honestly don't know the answer. I'm Allison Batty Capps of Blossoming Heart Wellness. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, a wellness coach, and a spiritual mentor. And I want to be really clear. This isn't a teaching about absolute truth. It is a philosophical exploration. It's a conversation I've been having with myself that I hope will bring in you as I try to make sense of spirituality, psychology, neuroscience, and what it actually means to be human. Because there seems to be one philosophy that says healing means becoming so internally grounded that whether people stay or leave no longer determines your well-being. I generally see wisdom in that teaching. I've experienced that kind of healing myself. In fact, that is what just happened for myself after that tremendous loss. And there was a time in my life when abandonment wounds became so overwhelming that my nervous system completely lost its ability to orient to reality. After losing those relationships, something happened that showed me how much my system has changed. Last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and my husband wasn't in bed. Years ago, that would have completely overwhelmed me. This time, I felt the fear begin to arise, but instead of disappearing into it, I was able to gently turn toward that frightened part of myself and say, I know you're scared. Whatever happens, we'll find a way to create a beautiful life together. That moment felt profoundly healing, but it also opened another question. Is that the whole picture? Because when I look at neuroscience and psychology, I noticed something fascinating. Before we even knew who we were, another human being helped shape our nervous system. Our brains developed in relationship. We learned to regulate our emotions through co-regulation or through self-regulation because our caregivers were not able to co-regulate us. Our understanding of ourselves is influenced by thousands of interactions with other people throughout our lives. That doesn't prove what healing should look like, but it does make me wonder if relationships play such a foundational role in our development, what role might it continue to play throughout healing? I also think about something else I witness in my own life and in my work with clients. When our protective parts and wounded parts become strongly activated, it can be incredibly difficult to access that calm, compassionate, curious place inside us that many people in internal family systems call self, and in the spiritual community, they call the God spark. Sometimes we find our way back on our own, and sometimes another person's steady presence, their willingness to simply stay with us, or hearing someone gently say, I'm here, helps those frightened parts soften just enough that the individual's self can begin leading again. Not because another person healed us, but because relationships sometimes create the conditions where our own inner healing becomes more accessible. That distinction feels deeply important to me. You may arrive somewhere completely different than I do, and that is okay. My hope isn't that we all agree. My hope is that we can become more curious together, because I think these questions are worth asking. And that leads me to another question. Have we, as a culture, sometimes confused healthy individuation with radical self-sufficiency? Those things don't feel like the same thing. Healthy individuation says, I know who I am. Radical self-sufficiency sometimes says, I shouldn't need anyone. I wonder if those are actually very different philosophies of being human. One thing I noticed through my own recent experience is that I wasn't longing for someone to rescue me. I wasn't asking anyone to fix my pain. What I found myself longing for instead was something much simpler: to have someone recognize that I was hurting before telling me what they needed. That realization surprised me because it made me begin asking another question. What actually is compassion? Is compassion staying? Is compassion leaving kindly? Is compassion acknowledging another person's suffering before setting a boundary? Can compassion and boundaries coexist? I think they can. I'm generally still exploring, and I am trying to offer both with people I interact with. Compassion first whenever possible, and then healthy limits. Spiritually, these questions become even bigger. If love is somehow woven into the fabric of reality, if many spiritual traditions suggest that as consciousness matures, compassion deepens and unity exists in the spirit world, then I wonder, is healing really about becoming someone who no longer needs relationships or who abandons relationships when they get hard? Or is it about becoming someone who can participate in relationships with greater wisdom, honesty, freedom, and mutual care, even when things get hard? I acknowledge that means different things for different people, and different people might have their own belief systems. Maybe the opposite of dependence isn't independence. Maybe it's mutuality, a way of relating where I can remain deeply connected to myself while remaining deeply connected to you, where neither one of us needs to disappear, where differences don't automatically end relationships, where boundaries don't eliminate compassion, where honesty doesn't eliminate kindness, where mistakes don't end relationships, where there's opportunity to grow together. I don't know if that's what God intends. I don't know if that's where humanity is evolving. I simply notice that when I allow spirituality, psychology, neuroscience, and my own lived experience to sit around the same table, these are the questions that keep emerging. Maybe healing isn't measured by how little we need one another. Maybe it's measured by how well we help one another become more fully ourselves. I don't have the answer. I'm simply curious, and I don't think there's one healthy way to navigate relationships. Different people, different nervous systems, different histories, and different capacities may lead us to different conclusions. I'm simply exploring what seems to help my own system make sense of being human and what helps my own system settle when activated. And I'd love to know, how do you experience this? And if this resonates, I'd love to try to build this kind of community together with you, where we can sit with each other in curiosity and compassion and attempt to deepen our understanding of one another so that we can stay in relationship even when one of us may have a part that is activated. Not as perfection, not as never growing, but as finding ways to meet each other where we are, where we can grow together. And if this interests you, you might want to go deeper by reading my book, The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, or you might consider working with me. My website, blossomingheartwellness.com, to learn more about my work and how to work with me. I'm sending you deep love and appreciation. No matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your nervous system needs, I accept you as you are. Deep love.